welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm V. LaBianca.
This is Skeptic Generation, and we need to talk. Hey, V, how's it going?
Good. What are you doing here? I thought I was hosting by myself today.
Yes, and I appreciate that you're patient with me. So, as it turns out, I made a friend at work who invited me to go out next Sunday.
Made a friend.
I did, and I'm excited about it, and I brought it up to you, and I know that you're supposed to be hosting solo today, but we're moving that back to next week so that I can go and do that thing at the same time.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm excited. I'm making new friends.
You look like you just got back from like a super rushed like tropical vacation because I was like, get here now.
Right?
You got on a plane. You still got like sand on you.
I'm definitely still in the taking a break like mode. So it may
So this will be
just
interesting.
a little bit to get back into the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's good to see you.
You too. It's been a minute.
Yeah, I loved watching last weekend's episode. That was a blast.
Robert was fun.
Yeah.
So fun.
And I missed a huge milestone for the show. Hey, y'all. You were here last week, so you know, but holy crap, we hit 15,000 subscribers.
That is so cool.
It is really, really neat. Thank you all so much for everything. I mean, this has been a ton of fun, and here's to the next 15,000, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
okay.
You asked for it for your birthday, and you got it.
I did, and it was a really, really fun birthday. So thank you, everybody. Before we dive into the show, I keep forgetting to actually like plug and thank people and all of that stuff. So yeah. I guess I'll do one now. That way I don't forget, because it's a crapshoot. Hey y'all, this show is brought to you by you. If you like what we do, or you just want to get an ad-free version of the show, consider going to patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration, where you can get an ad-free version of the podcast, of the live show, and other goodies that we cook up and are hoping to cook up in the future. If you want to see improvements to the set and you don't want to wait, you can go to tiny.cc/sgwishlist, which is where we stock the things that we're going to be getting for the show. And if somebody wanted to grab something for us and didn't want to wait, they could go there.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. We've got some callers on the line. I don't want to keep them waiting for too long, so let's dive right in. We've had, I am going to butcher their name, but Ottoa Tacona in Australia. Let's see how they pronounce that. Ottoa, you're live with Eric and V.
In 2 seconds.
Oh.
Sorry.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi. How do you pronounce your name?
Ottoa.
Ottoa. Okay.
So it's like Ottawa, but without the W.
Sounds good.
Hey, thank you for calling in. So it says that you want to explore ideas and misconceptions regarding Otherkin /therian identities. What is that?
So Otherkin is basically when you identify as or with a being that is not like of this current world. So like if you're identified as a saber-toothed tiger or a dragon, then you would be Otherkin. But if you identified as like a wolf, you would be therian. And I do, as far as I understand, there is a kind of a disconnect between the two communities.
So just to be clear, is this, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but is this like a LARPing thing? Is this like a kink thing? Like, how does this community interact? Is this, are there people who actually think that they're dragons, or is this more of like just how?
It's less of like what I am, and like for me personally, it's more like who I am. You know?
So is it like a fursona?
I mean, I am a furry, so yeah, a little. But it kind of goes deeper, because I mean, I have my own like senses of like euphoria, like times it makes me feel good, and then there's times where like I feel like I don't like really belong in like how I feel like I should be a different way in
You know,
that kind of sense.
So I guess the first thing that I want to do jumping in here is start with an affirmation. I think you should be you. And the of it is one of exploring and not only finding new ways to love yourself, but finding communities where you feel acceptance and where you feel like you are getting to get those benefits of being in a community. And I fully endorse and support people doing that. I guess the skeptic piece of me, though, has a couple of questions. The first is, do you see yourself or other people like that as somehow magical or having powers or things like that would kind of set my skeptic spidey senses off?
No. And from what I've understand and from what I've read, it's only about 30% of people who do.
Okay. Oh man, those 30% are pretty loud, because I feel like I hear about them more than I do the not them, the 70%.
Yeah.
The silent majority.
Oh God.
Couldn't help it. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I guess in this case that may be true. Okay. So, I know that you are not representative of an entire group, and I don't want people to take you necessarily as a representative of a group, but are there any misconceptions that you want to clear up? Because it sounds like you've got the soapbox right now. What do you want to address?
I think the first thing I wanted to address that it isn't an entirely spiritual belief. So,
okay.
We got that down. And I've also heard, discussions about why it isn't valid, because I've heard a lot of people say, or I've expressed feelings that people who do identify as such a way are kind of appropriating.
What are they appropriating?
Hello?
Hello?
Looks like you may have cut out.
Oh, no. Well, I hope they call back in. It's definitely, they called in a few times.
Yeah, it might be a bad connection.
Yeah, so we will hope that they call back in. I guess I do kind of want to make a couple of points there. They talked about gatekeeping. And I feel like if it's a purely fantasy thing that's going on, why are people gatekeeping each other in and out of it? That seems really...
Have you met the fantasy community?
Well, I get, I see the toxicity, but why are people invalid? It kind of blows my mind.
Well, I can speak to this.
Hit, please.
So this is a very common thing that happens in marginalized groups in general, where the more quote unquote normal groups are very hesitant to, or conventionally could be folded into current society without causing too many disruptions, are very hesitant to embrace or acknowledge groups that don't have that same level of conventionality or ability to become conventional, because they see it as a way of invalidating them. So, for example, during the gay rights movement, it was started primarily by drag queens and queer people and trans people, and they very quickly got moved out of the spotlight. And the people who ended up benefiting from that the most were white, cis, gay, and lesbian people. And the reasoning behind that was, it's easier for people to ignore us and to not have to change their lives or their conceptions too much. We're not asking too much. And so we're going to put on the back burner everybody else. So a lot of people who are in the trans community and the non-binary community are suspicious of people who want to say, I identify as Otherkin, because it's the same process of, well, that seems even weirder than us, and we're trying really hard to seem not weird. So we're going to distance ourselves from you or say that you aren't real, when in fact, to my best understanding, the way that they are using the term identify is completely different. And it's just the fuzziness of the word that is being shared that makes that connection at all. So
that gives me so many questions.
Yeah,
so many questions.
It's a very big topic.
Yeah, it really does, because I don't know. I guess when we're specifically talking about social constructs, which all of these would fit under that umbrella, is it only limited to the imagination and creativity of the people who are being willing to, or who are wanting to engage in those social constructs? Like it doesn't, I don't know.
Everything is.
Okay, then if that's the case, then yeah, no, I don't know. It kind of, you know what it kind of picks at, and I probably shouldn't say this on air just because.
Oh goodness, where are we going with this?
Here's the point where somebody gets really mad at Eric and blows him up on Twitter.
Oh no, the thing you are never on.
Exactly. Is the whole what are they called? The people who say, oh, you know, I feel emotions, but I feel emotions so much more than
a
you.
Highly sensitive person.
Highly sensitive. And when that was explained to me, it did feel very invalidating, because it felt like there was an assumption made about my ability to feel feelings. Mm-hmm. And the idea that, oh, you just need special care given to you because you feel them more than me, is an assumption about a subjective experience that you have no way of knowing. You know, it appears to me that somebody who would say that would only say that based on their observation that I'm able to, like, that I've practiced my entire life to have a handle on my feelings and not fly off the handle. It feels like invalidating me based on the work I've spent a lifetime building. And so in that way, I can imagine, you know, that invalidation feeling. And I wonder where those cross.
Well, I think that is a very different area, just because the way that you would get a therapist to tell you that you might be an HSP is by taking surveys that are personal to you about how you feel, and then they compare your average based on the average. So it's not saying I feel more things than you do. It's
that's the way it was explained to me by an HSP.
Oh, as we will see for all of these issues, the language that we use to describe that and the defensiveness that inevitably comes up when you are trying to explain something that you know the other person is waving all the red flags on the other side of the conversation table, justified or otherwise, it really does become a communication thing. But yeah, point taken there.
Fair enough.
I don't know if there is a survey that a therapist could give somebody to determine if they were otherkin, is what I'm saying. I don't think they're necessarily comparable in that way. But we do have some other calls.
We do. We're going to get way off the rails if we don't.
We could just have that conversation, but that's not what you guys are here for.
Could you just imagine us getting blown up by the HSP community?
Is there a HSP community? I don't know. Is there? Are you part of it?
If you are, give us a call.
Just don't tell me that you have mirror neurons that allow you to read your neighbor's thoughts.
Please tell me that you have mirror neurons that allow you to read your neighbor's thoughts. I need that in my life. I need that. You guys, I need that. I think the difference there is at least, people like Ottoa know that they're engaging in a fantasy.
Well, I mean, we want to make sure that we're not putting words in their mouth, but we will have them either call in next week or hopefully be able to continue that.
Fair enough. In the meantime, let's see, who do we want to talk to?
Well, we've got a deist and a theist.
Okay. I know that we've picked up with this theist before. Mm-hmm. And let's see if there's a conversation today. Connor in Texas, a recurring caller who has been amicable in the past, wants to continue a discussion about Baha'i faith. Connor, you're live with Eric and V.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, doing well. So
we are hearing a little bit of feedback, so if you're on speaker or you've got us on in the background, could you mute that, please?
Yeah, it's feeding back.
I have y'all on a headset, so I don't know what the feedback could be coming from.
It could be that the volume is loud enough on your ears that it's getting picked up by your mic. There are times when I've had the volume up on my earpiece so much that it gets picked up on the microphone. So it could be that. And actually now it's gone.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I just turned down the volume on my phone.
What's up?
It's almost like you do this for a living.
I know. All right. So Connor, did you have a specific topic that you wanted to talk about? I'm kind of in a place where I'm not wanting to meander too much. So if we can find a specific thing to talk about, that'd be good.
Well, it was originally intended to be maybe try and pick up from the first conversation we had before V left for Oregon, I think it was, and they sounded like you made it sound like you would like to you wanted to look into it. So this is just like seeing if y'all wanted to pick up with it.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I feel so bad. I never remember what the last conversation was. So y'all are gonna have to bring me up to speed.
Well, I will admit, I have not done too much additional digging into the Baha'i faith. Essentially, though, the way that I would love to take this is, it's difficult to kind of engage with minority religions on a show like this in a couple of different ways, just because of the mindset I'm bringing to the table, which is, hey, the reason that I dislike certain religions is because they are actively participating in oppression in areas like in their own spheres, right? And also in spheres where they frankly just don't belong and should butt out of. And applying skepticism in those areas can help us identify that harm and hopefully address it. In situations where someone calls in and they're talking about becoming a pagan or their Baha'i faith, I do want to take a little bit of a different track, right? I'm not going to saddle you with the religious oppression that other religions bring to the table. And I frankly don't know enough about your religion to know if it also is oppressive in certain ways. So I am coming at this with kind of a blank slate, but I would really like to dig into that skeptical piece of it and really kind of get to the crux of why you believe that the Baha'i faith is correct. Because if I remember from our last conversation, you had mentioned that it was kind of an amalgam of the other, kind of Abrahamic faiths, but you also had issues with those other faiths and the legitimacy of them. So in my mind, no, is that wrong?
No, it's not. We don't have issues with other faiths.
Well, the legitimacy of
really
their
an amalgamation.
Okay. How would you describe your relationship with, say, the Christian Bible or the Hebrew Bible, all of that?
So it's more of a there's this belief that we have called progressive revelation, in that as the eons go by, new messengers are sent to give an update for our growth as a society and as a race, to help move us in the proper direction. So it's kind of like how Christianity builds on Judaism, and Islam and Muslims believe they are built on top of that. They even call the Quran the Third Testament. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's kind of the same line of building on top of.
So the reason I have a problem with other religions saying that, beyond the obvious, retro canonizing someone's, story, in the same way that we'll see remakes of things coming out of Hollywood where it's like, oh, actually, this all happened in this way, and, ignore the other thing. Apart from that element, my concern is that a lot of these other beliefs have an idea of God, especially Christians and Christians specifically have this idea that God is omnipotent, right? And there's this all-powerfulness that, to me, doesn't make sense in the context of progressive revelation, because it seems like a very inefficient and kind of useless way to get to truth if you do have the ability to just give people truth. Is the Baha'i faith positing any kind of omnipotent power, or is it more of a this is the only way things possibly could have happened situation.
Wait, I'm sorry. You may have to rephrase that last question there.
My question is about your God, essentially. So the reason that I reject the progressive revelation of the Christians is because it is in direct conflict with their idea of an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good God. So the reason I would reject it in the Baha'i faith would be the same if you also had that kind of a God, but I don't know if you do. So do you have a God that is kind of tri-omni or maximally great?
Well, we don't really have a description for God because we can't know God in its entirety. But when I want to get to the progressive revelation part, it has more to do with we have an analogy. It's kind of like when you have a child in school. You teach them things along the way as they grow and develop, and then you just give them a more accurate version along the way, if that makes sense to you.
No. May I?
Yeah, go for it.
So I would like to respond to that, but also ask a question kind of as a follow-up. So the first piece that really gets me is, it sounds like you're trying to ignore the times when they're directly contradicting. Do you recognize that the holy books that you're referencing contradict each other?
Well, I'm not going to try and defend them.
But
we are today.
No, it sounds like you're defending their divinity, and if they are divine and also contradict each other, then yeah, you do have a lot to explain, right? That is a problem that saying I'm not going to do that doesn't absolve you of. It just makes you willingly ignorant of, and I wouldn't want you to do that. So I'm challenging you. What's up with the contradictions?
So this might be easier if you give an example.
Sure. We can go from the Old Testament or Torah and compare that to the New Testament, and we can see that what Moses wrote down to the Israelites, those books, look at Leviticus and then compare that to what's being taught by Jesus in the New Testament. There are contradictions.
Right. And with a specific example of the differences.
Did you got one at hand ready?
I mean, you're the one who goes into Old Testament studies. For me...
Sure. So, well, no.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you follow Levitical, the law of Leviticus, right? Do you not eat shellfish? Do you not plant crops in the same field or wear mixed fabrics? Do you, as a society, do you believe that people ought to be murdered?
Social laws of the old books.
You don't follow the social laws. Okay, so if something doesn't count...
The social laws of the old books.
Okay, so if something doesn't count as how do you determine that something's a social law or not a social law?
Well, it's kind of there's kind of like a generic two category between spiritual laws and social laws. So like you described, like a way to organize human society as the example you just gave. Those would be social laws. Actually,
I think that a lot of those, especially the abolitions against homosexuality, were considered moral laws. And today there are still people who would consider those moral laws, not social laws.
Okay.
Do you think that your God's morality changes over time?
I'm trying to figure out how to explain this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because like I keep saying, it's about.
Well, I hear
God's
the reason.
Morality. It's about.
Well, I hear you talk about raising the child, but let's say I'm looking at this hypothetical child, and at 3 years old, I tell them that touching their private parts is dirty and filthy, and then when they're 7, I go, no, I'm just kidding. Like, I did damage there. I should not have told them that touching their naughty bits was dirty and filthy.
Or calling them naughty bits.
But Do you get what I'm saying? You know, if somebody as a teenager brought home a same-sex partner that they were in a happy relationship with, and I told them that that was vile and it's sinful, and I cast them out of the house, and then when they come back in their 20s, I go, oh yeah, no, it's totally fine. That says a lot about me, doesn't it? I'm not actually talking about how the society is being organized. Those are moral commandments.
I mean, it's just the best way I can describe it for you is that it's about us when we are ready. It's not necessarily about okay, so about some of the things you said.
Sure.
I'm sure we can agree that what we know of as those old texts are probably nowhere near as what they originally were, right?
No, you're appealing to a mystery. You're appealing to something you don't have evidence of, and because of that, I'm not letting you get away with that. Unless
I don't understand. We know that there are mistranslations all the time throughout history.
We do, and even looking at old translations of things, they don't wipe away the fact that you're left with this book. All that means is that your God left a really, really bad history. Or knew, maybe, did your God maybe know that things were going to get mistranslated and was totally okay with that along the line? Like, that's just more problems. That's not less.
So if I understand what you just asked, then the best way I can describe it is that over time, it's that people are the ones who misuse and abuse the authority they believe was given by God for their own ends, and then they distort it in such a way that it probably doesn't even look like what it was originally intended to be.
Charitably, hopefully, that may be the case, but unless we have evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, my question is, how do you know when that has happened and when it hasn't?
Because it just sounds really convenient for that God to hide behind the idea that mistranslations are covering up the really nice thing that he really meant to say.
To be honest, I don't have the accurate answer that you're looking for. But that's why we have, but the issues that I've laid out is kind of the reason why there is this teaching of progressive revelation, is to have a correction.
Yeah.
When such things happen like
right.
that.
It's that makes a lot of sense. If you want to continue believing in a thing and the things are contradictory and change their mind and you still want to believe it, then yes, progressive revelation is a great way to explain that if you don't look too closely at it. But what we're doing now is we're putting that under the microscope and we're saying, okay, so let's assume that that's the way things have worked, and that is progressive revelation. How do actual contradictions in moral law factor into progressive revelation? And if you're going to say, well, it's just we weren't ready, are you condoning a system in which hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have died as a result of violating this moral law that we just weren't ready to understand yet? Like, are you saying that this is a good way to roll out your moral law, or is this a bad way that we are just kind of stuck with because we don't have access to a God with all knowledge? Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah. An example is thou shalt not permit a witch to live. Right?
Yeah.
That is backed up in Old Testament. That's backed up in Muslim teachings, right? And I don't know where that was taken off the wall. Taken off the bulletin board.
Well, certainly after the tens of thousands of people were
burned as witches,
killed or tortured or displaced for being witches. So, like, was that a result of the moral law not yet? Like, how do you explain that, for example, in your worldview of, well, we're just rolling this out progressively?
Well, I thought I did go over that about the people distorted for their own ends aspect.
Well, yeah, and that is also a good way to stop thinking about it, right? That's a thought-stopping technique where you go, oh, well, that's just other people, right? But then we have to ask, how do we know? How do you know that the burning times was not God's will and was the will of, people misunderstanding it? If you say you don't know much about this God, right? We tried to get into specifics, and you're like, we can't know God. We don't know it. Okay, so how do you know that that wasn't the intention?
You're right, I can't know because I wasn't around back then to ask the proper questions to whoever delivered the message.
And you know what? We don't know either, and that's why we don't make those claims, because we don't think that we've got that ability, and we don't really think anybody does. But if somebody says they do, that's why we ask these questions.
Exactly.
So if we project this forward, the other thing that I had the pin in that I wanted to talk about was Mormons. So was Joseph Smith divinely inspired to bring a new message from Baha'u'llah, or not Baha'u'llah, from God? Same thing? No. Yeah.
Not the same thing.
No. Baha'u'llah was a prophet, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So from God was Joseph.
We don't call him a prophet.
Oh, okay. Was Joseph Smith divinely inspired?
He's not mentioned by Baha'u'llah when he mentioned the different manifestations of God.
Okay.
That were sent previously.
So that seems to me at like the most contemporaneous account that I can think of, one of the most recent accounts of what I would consider to be progressive revelation the way that you're describing it. And so let's say I became the 2022 version of Joseph Smith, right? I want to fool you, and I want to fool Baha'i people into thinking that I have a divine message. How can you determine if I'm lying to you? And how would you be able to figure that out? Because that's a really, really important thing to know.
Well, personally, if someone did that, I'd have to first see what they were teaching. Like, what is the message they're trying to convey?
Sure. What if my message was fucking awesome? It is the most awesome message you can imagine. It is so much better for society. Would you believe that I was divinely inspired?
It depends on what your message is.
That
you would have to actually give me specifics on it.
But why would that matter if you don't know God and what God's will is and what that ultimate end goal for morality is? Why would it matter what he's teaching?
Yeah, the awesomeness of what I have to say, no matter what the specifics was, would need to have that touch point, would need to have that thing to compare it to. Otherwise, it sounds like Baha'i people are just looking for the most awesome things people say. And if it's cool enough, then it's divinely inspired. And if it's not cool enough, then it's not.
No, well, the thing is, we are taught by the faith to conduct an independent investigation of truth. And so we are supposed to look into it on ourselves and not just take others at their word. And in fact, there is no, how am I trying to put this? No, that doesn't work. I'm having a bit of trouble trying to phrase this.
You're good.
And it also probably doesn't help that we came at you hard and fast today with a whole bunch of stuff. How dare you not be like on the ball for 20 million things back to back? That was totally understandable, Connor.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Do you want to sit on that for a bit? And
so,
unless you want
to... Maybe there's another way I can explain this. It's another teaching in the faith about how we should not be restricted to just looking at one faith, even if it's the one we grew up in, to see if that's the right one for us. Like, Baha'i parents are encouraged to expose their children as they grow up to other faiths. And I even know this older couple, even though their son and his wife both grew up Baha'i, they were still raised with the belief that, now those two are agnostic, so they were raised with the belief that, hey, it's okay if being a Baha'i isn't your thing and you just want to go be agnostic on it.
Yeah, and
that kind of thing.
That's really cool. And honestly, religions that conduct themselves in that way and encourage individual growth into whatever you want to believe and then are fine with you after you make a choice, awesome, cool. I don't have an ethical problem with that. What I do have questions about is that you Connor, and I don't want to talk about like all of Baha'i people, right? You very, very clearly do believe that the Baha'i faith is correct. And what my questions for you want to get at is like, when you went on that exploration of faith, when you did analyze the evidence, what was it that convinced you? Because so far, I feel like we've asked some questions and we've gotten some answers that I could have gotten from a Christian who just was parroting their pastor, which is the concerning thing to me. So I know that we kind of put you on the spot, and I would love to dive into this some more if you're open to it. But that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. The reason why that spoke to me so deeply is because that was exactly what I was told in church. Is God was perfect, and any of the problems that I had were actually problems that other people have, and it's not actually God. And it wasn't addressing it. It was just stopping the thought. And
a lot of the time we need to be told like, oh, hey, there's another question after that, because we just haven't thought of it ourselves, or it hasn't been presented well. And that's never on you, Connor, right? I think that you honestly care about what is true. And I think that this is what you are convinced of. And now what's exciting to me is that we are going to get to dive into that. And if you have really good reasons for believing what you believe, I might be convinced. And that would be super interesting to me.
And I mean, personally, I just want to first see where the gatekeeping out Joseph Smith and Mormons would be. But like,
you're really on that one.
I really am. I don't know why he doesn't belong in the club. I mean, I would, if I were to like take Joseph Smith, there was some terrible, terrible shit that he did, and compare him to Muhammad. Muhammad was pretty awful. And, you know, if I were to look at those two, I think through modern lenses, I'd go, okay, neither of those were divinely inspired. Those guys
okay,
were
but
awful.
then that would also be just pulling what you think is divinely inspired based on what appeals to your personal morality.
Exactly. And I'm just repeating back what it seems like Connor is saying. And so,
not something we want to be doing.
Yeah,
all right.
It's just not a good test.
We should move on, I think, to another call.
Fair enough.
But Connor, thank you for calling in and for being open and honest about where you're at.
Could I make one last comment on the Mormon thing? That might maybe. So when it comes to Mormons, we consider them part of Christianity. So I guess the thing is they would be more considered as having been followers of Jesus's revelation. If that makes any sense.
It does. It just adds an entire other layer of really, really crazy claims. And from there, then, you know, did Jesus come to the United States and preach to Native Americans? And, you know, were there great wars between, you know, tribes of Native Israelites? And are Native Americans actually Jewish? You know, and like all of those kinds of things that are claimed. And so it just adds on more, you know?
Yeah.
It feels like being Baha'i takes on a lot.
That's my thought too. It's like you are taking on
all the problems of
all of them. Like they like, have you ever watched like a Christian and a Muslim apologist go at it? Or even a Christian and a Christian from a different denomination just going at it? Like
it's essentially a whole game of my dad could beat up your dad.
Essentially.
But for the Baha'i saying, no, it's everybody's dad, then you've got all those conflicts. And Connor, I would say the most uncharitable thing that I could describe that is as it sounds like you need to be really good at cherry picking. And that's not a great way to navigate the world.
Well, here's something else. Cherry picking is just fine when you're building a worldview, as long as you're not bringing divine baggage into it. If you could want to look at Judaism and Christianity and Islam and any other religion and be like, I like that, I like that, I like that, I'm going to take this phrase, I'm going to take that thing. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. That is totally fine. Everyone does that with everything all of the time. The problem is when you then create a religion out of it and say, these are the true things, because then you have to back up why they are objectively true, as opposed to just, I like them.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, we need to move on. But Connor, it was good talking to you today.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. I just played out an entire story in my head now. You know, even the non-moral things, right? Like, let's say I'm your neighbor and you see that I'm picking radishes in my garden, and you go, Eric, why are you picking your radishes this way? And I say, well, because God says this is the way that you should do it. And you go, oh, well, I pick radishes this way, and then I just yell heretic, and I just start going like
what is happening in your brain?
My brain is going all over the place today. It's just the idea that, you know, when you add a moral God component to even benign things, it becomes something that you fiercely need to defend.
Right.
And yeah, it's rough.
What if it's just something you like to do? And that's all the justification you need.
Exactly. Anyway.
Who would you like to talk to next? We've got some really interesting calls.
We really do. I haven't really had the chance to look, though. Is there anyone that's popped out to you?
Well, we've
5
got...
callers here.
I feel like Chris might have some interesting...
Ooh, the dangers of spirit science and other groups espousing New Age mysticism, which can lead to harmful beliefs and warped worldviews. Yeah, let's talk to Chris in Scotland. That sounds like fun.
Awesome.
Chris in Scotland, you're live with Eric and V.
Hi again, Eric and V.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
What is spirit science?
Oh, have you not heard of it? It's
I've
it's this sort of...
I've heard of it a while ago. Like, it's definitely something that I know that I read about. But if you were to like put a gun to my head, I could not tell you a single thing about it. So,
oh, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this sort of... It's a YouTube channel, but it's also a community of people who are deeply, deeply devoted to the beliefs of things like everything ranging from Atlantis to cover-ups to Martians ruling the world to having the power to astral project and
So like the History
multiple
Channel on
dimensions.
steroids.
A little bit, yeah. There's a guy that sort of started it all. I'm not sure if he's still involved in it, but yeah, it got me into a lot of crazy worldviews. It's like it's a gateway drug for spirituality and all that stuff.
You know, I get what you're saying. I would pull the spirituality part out. I know that I saw a really good talk about spirituality that V had last week with a caller. I don't think necessarily someone doing something that they feel is spiritual is bad, but I would say the gateway to conspiracy theories is really bad. So what is there anything specific that you want to bring up as an example or address? Because if I without someone who believes it here, I just worry that I just worry that we're going to wind up straw manning somebody, and that's not fair.
I totally understand that.
Yeah.
And a specific example is the belief that, you know, in 2012 that, you know, the whole world was going to have this pole shift and this consciousness shift, you know, and it's this idea that, you know, the world is not going to come to an end as such, but it will not be as we know it. And things like that, I feel, can be quite dangerous because it causes people to value the world that we're living in much less, and things like that. I
agree. Go ahead, babe.
I'm on what I believe is the website, thespiritscience.net. Does that sound accurate, Chris?
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
Okay, so I can't get to the first time here page because an ad just pops up that won't leave. But some of the pages are all of the different chakras, hermetics, under science. There is energy, technology, civilizations, and discoveries.
Geometry.
Sacred geometry, healing, and philosophy are all under spirituality. And then...
Oh, the spirit science.
The Atlantis King, spirit science, patch parables.
This sounds like a grab bag of crazy. All right, so here's the question. If you are a spirit scientist, if you believe in spirit science, call us. We have so many questions. In the meantime, just to address the example that you gave, because we should give it, talk about at least one of those things. If you're telling people the world is going to end, those people stop making plans for the future. And often they make decisions you did.
I used to wholeheartedly believe in all of this stuff, I genuinely believed that, chakras and all this holistic stuff. That I don't think that's the right word, but all of this stuff, that it was equal to actual medicine and things like that. And I think things like that can be quite dangerous. There's someone who, I'm not sure if they're part of the whole spirit science community, but what they're doing is very similar, called Teal Swan.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
It's a person who promotes, is holistic the word? Where they get medication, they dilute it massively.
Yeah. Oh, like homeopathy?
Homeopathy is a
that's the word.
Yeah.
There we go.
Just the belief that the world is being run by Martians, and that just there's a lot of stuff in there that can be both dangerous, and it can also lead to you thinking in a way that really opens you up for a lot of other stuff.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if there's not going to be a tomorrow, then why not give the money that you have today to, the person who's telling that to you? It's a great way to scam people. It's a great way to get people to give you their money instead of going to a doctor. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that personally, and have seen the horrible consequences of that. It is not just like your opinion, man. It is really dang important that we are not lying to people when it comes to medicine, when it comes to it's vile, and I think it's one of the most immoral, unethical things you could do.
I think though there's a deeper level here that I do want to touch on, because I did talk about it a little bit last week, or the week before.
Okay.
Chris, one of the things that you said here is like this kind of mysticism, this kind of new age woo that defies actual science can be very harmful, and that is accurate. But there's harm on the other side too, which is if we offer people two options, and the options are no spirituality, no ritual, no nothing, science all the way, don't be in wonder about anything, or you are hippy dippy woo woo, people are going to go for hippy dippy woo woo because they don't see other options, and they have not been taught to engage with some really cool shit on a deep and moving and important physical and psychological and emotional level correctly. And so one of the things that I want to continue to do personally, and hopefully you understand this larger skeptical community, is talk about things like ritual, talk about things like using the term spirituality in ways that are not hippy dippy woo woo, so that people understand, oh, there are good ways to address these things. I don't have to deny the fact that I enjoy doing XYZ or thinking about this or imagining what it would be like if, as long as I'm doing it responsibly. And then once you come at it from a place of safety and from that place of education and understanding, you are going to be a lot less vulnerable to groups like spirit science that come at you and say, I can tell that you are, not tapped into this part of yourself. I'm going to give you this outlet that is harmful and that will lead you down a path towards self-destruction.
Or at least to the poorhouse.
You have a really good point. You have a really good point, and it is important to address these parts of human culture, like tradition, like ritual. Mm-hmm. And I think that spirituality by itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It's more just the eclectic mix of nonsense that spirit science espouses. Yes. Everything from multiple dimensions to chakras to, Atlantis and just a massive amount of stuff. Because once you watch one of their videos, and I strongly suggest you watch something called the Human History Movie, that will give you a really good idea of the kind of thing they're espousing.
Oh, jeez.
It can just be quite dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can lead you down a path.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be addicting for people who want to feel like they have special secret knowledge, mm-hmm. and that they are unique and special and enlightened. and that you don't need to be a spirit scientist to feel that way. I've met plenty of atheists who think that they're so enlightened. It can just be bad. But Chris, thank you for calling in. This has been fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate having the conversation, and it is amazing to talk to you both once again.
Oh,
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Take care.
Have a good day.
I need to be a little less trigger happy with that drop call button. I feel like I cut off the last word of every single person. I apologize.
No worries.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, so who are we talking to next?
Well, we have some options.
Well, we have a question about cultural appropriation, and I don't know how to engage with that, but I guess I'd like to try. Let's try talking to Johnny in Utah.
Cool.
Right? Well, when is it cultural appropriation as opposed to being practical and accepting? Johnny, you're live with Eric and V.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
I don't know if you remember me. I'm the one from the foot cult in Utah.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what,
A while ago.
no worries. Do you have an example? Because it's hard to kind of talk about this topic generally.
I actually have 2 of them.
Okay, perfect.
What's up?
So let's hit the first one, and then the second one's a little bit more near and dear to my heart. But so, obviously, you guys know who Black Panther is, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
The Marvel. Okay, so my wife runs a character company. Okay, and
A character
so if you
what?
want, like, a character company.
Okay.
So, like, if you have a 5-year-old son and you want Spider-Man to come to their birthday party,
Got
Oh,
it.
you hire an actor, yeah. And so, like, if you have a 5-year-old girl, she dresses up as a princess, and we always have to stay in character, blah, 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 right?
Mhm.
And it's super fun. But, and it's a super interesting dynamic that what happened was, so this particular family wanted Spider-Man and Black Panther to come to their party. And we have a Black friend who was, also willing to do an act, but he's like, dude, I fucking love Spider-Man. Can I do Spider-Man?
Cool.
And I'm like, absolutely. And I'm white cis, right? And obviously that makes me Black Panther. The white guy is Black Panther, and the black guy is Spider-Man. And our Black roommate, her best friend, gets very, very upset with this. Okay, that I'm playing a Black character.
Sure.
And I feel like that's okay. Don't get me wrong. Like I feel like I'm an ally. Side note, like last week, thank you, V, for introducing me to freaking Uncle Bobby. That guy is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway,
I feel like this.
yeah. So
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, and she's like, she used the word, you're appropriating my culture. And I was like, first off, Marvel's not a culture.
Give it a couple of years. It
Second
will
off.
become a new mythology, but
Well,
I'm so down. It's way better than what we got so far.
have thoughts about that one.
there's so much there to unpack, and I feel like we would best be served with a frank deconstruction of this, right? I think you're absolutely right that Wakanda is not an actual country, and so the culture of Wakanda is not one that is right. That absolutely makes sense. That said,
Able to be appropriated.
Right.
But yeah, no, I get you. There's a lot of background here.
Right.
But keep going.
Here in the United States, this is a country where there has been a lot of fighting against
Horrific.
racist practices. You can go back to white people, depicting Black people in minstrel shows, right? As joke characters. You have the erasure of Black actors when it comes to roles that they would better be suited to. You do have so many cases of appropriation that I imagine that seeing that, it just set that exact same alarm that you see reflected in the real world. And so I mean, I can absolutely understand where your friend is coming from. I just would phrase it a little bit differently, that it may not be appropriation, but it is closely reflecting the kind of appropriation that is a problem. And while it may be benign in the case that you're talking about, it definitely does mean that we still have so many conversations in the country that we need to address, that we need to talk about, because there's still a lot of pain. I don't know.
Oh, and I 100% agree. And honestly, I was actually, no offense to you, we're both white. But that's actually kind of why I actually meant to call you while you were, flying solo there, Eric. But when is it appropriation and when is it appreciation? Like, is it just the making fun of part of it? Is it just the act itself? Well, and I'll give you my second example now, so we can try and.
Well, I do want V to get the chance to talk. Though.
Yeah, and I think we might need to.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I do think we might need to stick with this one example for this time around, just because there are things we do want to dive into still about it. I don't want to move off of it too fast. It's not a worse example. It's a good example to talk about. So the
other one's my two kids, so it's even closer to the heart.
The two things are. We need to make sure we're paying attention to two different spheres here, right? There's the personal and there's the systemic, right? And the danger that I see happen a lot is when we mix up the two. It's not systemic conversation necessarily when you are having a conversation with one friend who is totally cool being Spider-Man while you are Black Panther, and another friend who is not cool with that, right? They are not avatars of their race, right? They are just people. And so that conversation should absolutely be held not as an, is this cultural appropriation systemically? And more of a, tell me more about how you feel about that. Can we as individuals talk about this in a way that educates me, So I do want to make sure we're addressing that we are giving every single person in this situation an entirety of their personhood and individuality. So you are absolutely always going to get conflicting ideas from different people of the same background or race or gender, because each person is different. And that's not necessarily a problem with cultural appropriation being contradictory. That's just two people in a system engaging in it in different ways. So I do want to put that on the table first. The question about...
That was awesome. Thank you. That was very insightful.
Good. I'm glad it's helpful. This is something I've had to do a lot of thinking about myself. The other part of that, though, the bigger question, right? Now we are moving into the systemic, is when is it cultural appropriation versus appreciation? And in my view, that becomes a lot more sticky based on where you live and the kind of person that you are, right? So I have no doubt that if you were engaging in something that someone else considered cultural appropriation, you personally would not be viewing it in that way, right? You would be viewing it as appreciation for a thing. That is an individual thing. On a systemic level...
No, I would. My naivete might have stopped me in the past, but...
Yeah. And the thing that I want to just kind of put a pin in, and then we can move on, and I'll give you the chance to wrap up, is we need to make sure that we are looking at our actions in that broader context as well. It is very difficult for white people to merely appreciate Black culture in America, right? We might individually feel like we are just appreciating it. It's really difficult to do that in a culture that has benefited from and continues to benefit from cultural appropriation of that culture. So that is a much larger conversation, and one that really requires a lot more insight than I have. My take is focus on the individuals. When it's two people having a disagreement, that is a personal disagreement. That might be different philosophies on a subject. That does not mean the subject itself is contradictory. On a larger level, sometimes there are just things we shouldn't do or can't do yet or now or due to X factor. That doesn't mean we're bad people. That doesn't mean they're bad people. That doesn't mean anyone's bad in that situation as individuals. That means we are all operating in a bad system, and we all lose, essentially, from operating in that bad system. So I really hope that at some point...
Kobayashi Maru.
Exactly. We get to a position where we can culturally appreciate every culture and engage in that way. We just aren't there as a system. yet. And so it's really tricky to try and get out of that while still living in that system. I'm off my soapbox. We're good.
Oh no, you were awesome. That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and Robert actually is in the comments for this episode and says, wear the costume, not the skin color.
Oh yes, please, please, please. Costume only. I know that probably goes without saying, but
yeah, but I mean, it is just so sticky, especially I appreciate that you bring up the difference between societal and systemic versus personal, because you're not going to get the same response from people. Like it's just so varied. It's very difficult to extrapolate that. But that said, Johnny, I don't know. What did we do in this conversation? I feel like it was good to talk about. I just don't.
You want to know what you did for me?
What did we do?
Honestly, it was a call to action for me.
Yeah.
The answer to this entire conversation was that I heard how she felt, and I never engaged her in conversation and asked, why do you feel that way? And I should be better about that. That's what it boils down to me, is I should have approached my roommate, not even my friend, it's my wife's best friend. She lives with us. And instead of engaging her in conversation, I got my feelings hurt, and that's silly. I should have just approached her and like, hey, why do you feel like that way? Like, how can we make it better? Do you have any alternatives? Like,
that's a great takeaway, in my opinion.
It is. It is. Cool. It is also easy to armchair quarterback yourself after the fact. When you have your feelings hurt, walking away for a little bit and thinking about it is usually the best course of action. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah,
Johnny.
It's been like 3 months. I've been working on this in my head.
Oh man. Well, thank you for calling in.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I know that this person has been calling in, but the idea that religious nonprofits may be better for atheists, I don't.
You're hosting.
I am. Kay. I know you've been calling quite a bit recently, and I'm only hesitant because I don't want you to call so much that people get burnt out on you. But what about religious nonprofits being better for atheists?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
Well, I have a paper in front of me with a couple of points that I wanted to run with you, and then we can go back and forth.
Okay.
All right. So the title is "Religious Nonprofits May Be Better for Atheists: An Argument for Churches." Analogy: if a vegan join a nonprofit.
Wait,
hold on. Okay. So who published this? Where can I find it?
I wrote it on my free time.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you wrote this. Okay, so
yes. I'm atheist, by the way. I just wanted to remind you.
Sure. This is definitely not the platform to read the whole thing, but if you can give us your idea, your thesis here, we can engage with that.
Yeah, it's just a couple of points. It took me 10 minutes. If a vegan joined a nonprofit that feeds starving children in Africa, you wouldn't be like, why are you sending them hamburgers? If the priority is to help, then we can worry about whether or not...
Okay.
Yep.
We really can't have you reading a piece of paper on air. I'm sorry. Is there a way to summarize these? I know that you probably put a lot of thought into this. We have a Discord, we have a Facebook if you want to post the whole thing. But we really want to make sure we're jumping into conversation right away because we do only have about 20 minutes.
You can, absolutely.
Okay.
So tell me what you disagree with.
Well, we don't disagree with anything necessarily yet, but we really need to come to the main crux of this. So why are churches good for atheists?
Or better for atheists?
Okay, here are the pros, okay? One, the religious organization is already established. Two, it may take forever to start an atheist nonprofit in rural conservative areas. Three, it gives theists a direct exposure to atheists and facilitates understanding from both sides that it's harder to demonize an atheist when it's in front of you. And four, easy source for theists to debate and train your argument muscles.
Okay, so let's.
Thank you, by the way, for jumping through that.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So the statement religious nonprofits may be better for atheists, I feel like there are some hidden quotes, some hidden stuff in there that maybe we should address. Are you saying religious nonprofits may be better for atheists than atheist nonprofits? Or are you saying religious nonprofits may be better for atheists than nothing?
Yeah, than nothing.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree. V?
I mean,
A nonprofit versus not a nonprofit, helping people in a community, at least one that exists, is better than none at all.
if in a theoretical world someone was doing exactly what you laid out and making a space for atheists to voice their opinions and engaging in debate in, healthy ways and broadening their own horizons, yeah, sure, that sounds like a great place. I'd go visit.
It just the worry there is that they're taking care of their own tribe, and that's the worry when it comes to religious nonprofits. But it's not. The conversation never comes up versus nothing at all. The conversation usually comes up. Oh, go ahead.
What do you mean when you say they're taking care of their own tribe?
Sure. So when I was a good Christian boy, at least once a month, we would get together and we would go feed the homeless. And your entry to getting food and things to take care of yourself was that you needed to sit through a long, droning sermon that heavily browbeat you into admitting your evil ways and converting. And that was something that they had to do in order to get the food, right? If somebody was not willing to be talked at and browbeat that way, they were not going to get food. That sucks.
You think they would deny them food?
Yes.
Maybe it's just my my experience with a couple of religious nonprofits or churches, but that was never my experience. I was very openly atheist, and I spoke to a lot of pastors and people who wanted to debate me, and I had a fun time. I was given serving food and coffee and whatever, making sure
That's
that
wonderful.
most people were cool during the 2020s pandemic era, and I just felt like it was important to mention that. I don't know that it's right to group every Christian or every theist as saying that they're only going to take care of their own.
No,
I don't think that's fair. I think that
I didn't say that. I said
Okay,
I said
I'm
that.
sorry.
No, it's okay. I said that was my worry. The worry is that, and the hope is that everybody has the experience that you had. Unfortunately, there have been well-publicized cases in the past of atheist groups wanting to join religious groups and doing nonprofit work and being excluded and told that they cannot do charitable work because they are not, Christian. Mm-hmm. And that has really been a bummer. And I want to live in a world where more people have the kind of experience that you have had. And I don't know. I feel like I want to give you the affirmation. Kay, it sounds like you had a wonderful experience. And just like V, I think that more people should have those experiences. And I hope that more people do that. That's fantastic. It's just not always the case. That said, the argument isn't, is a religious nonprofit better than nothing at all? The argument is a
Maybe
religious.
better.
Well, I think that charitable organizations are better than not charitable organizations. I just think that an organization that very explicitly is not, religious that way, I think would be better. I would rather just give someone the sandwich, because not everybody has the experience you had.
For sure, but that depends on where you're living, though. And while you're, waiting for a religious, an atheist nonprofit to pop up, people are still, hungry or whatever or need help. So
okay, I just
to the side.
I just agreed with you on that. That's understood. We're talking about a religious versus a non-religious nonprofit now. We're not talking about religious versus nothing.
I guess I feel like this is definitely a conversation that we came in the middle of. I don't think that if you have watched the show, which I'm assuming you have, we are very clear that we are anti-harm, and we will work with people who have various faiths in order to address harm and to stop that harm from happening. We are at no point going to say, you believe in God, therefore fuck your sandwich, right? That's never going to happen on this show.
No.
But
Also,
I feel
need
like
that on a coffee mug.
fuck your sandwich.
Fuck your sandwich. Vila Bianca 2022.
People will take that as a directive, though, not an expletive.
We've got a smart audience.
Okay, so
Somebody will clip that somewhere and post it.
please do. Okay, the thing that I want to hone in on here a little bit is can you read through the points again that you listed off, those bullet points?
Okay. Pros. The religious organization is already established.
Okay.
It may take forever to start an atheist nonprofit in rural conservative areas. It gives theists a direct exposure to atheists and facilitates understanding from both sides. It's harder to demonize an atheist when it's in front of you. And 4, it's easy source of atheists to debate and train your argument muscles.
Got it. Okay. So those first two kind of sound like what you're saying is it's too hard. Is that your argument here? The reason that we should go with religious nonprofits is because it's going to be difficult to set up an atheist nonprofit?
Well, yeah.
Okay. I mean, fair.
Depends on where you're at, though.
It's a pragmatic approach to it for sure, which I can appreciate. But I think that
that's the theme of my calls, that I'm very pragmatic.
yeah. I think that we are going to come up against that here, where I'm going to say, yes, it's going to be harder, but is your argument then that we shouldn't do it, or that we should be relying on religious nonprofits while we set up our own? Or like, what is the takeaway here? Is it that just go to the religious nonprofit because there probably isn't even an atheist one in your in your area and it's too difficult to start one? Or is it, hey, let's start thinking about setting up a soup kitchen that doesn't require you to pray before you eat. And in the meantime, if people are hungry, we'll send them to the religious one down the street.
For sure.
Cool.
Yeah, just take the path of the path of least resistance, the one that gets you to feeding the hungry faster, and then you can worry about the atheist thing later. That's why I was giving you my analogy of the vegans. If a vegan joined the nonprofit that feeds starving children in Africa, you wouldn't be like, "Where are you sending the hamburgers?"
Yeah, Kay.
You just worry about the food and
None of us are disagreeing with you on that. If it's versus nothing, then yeah, we've been on board from the start. Yeah. So
if we want to get even more pragmatic, go down that route. You don't even have to start an atheist nonprofit. Just start a secular one. Just start one that seems to just have no religious affiliation and don't even freaking talk about it, right? And just be like, hey,
that's also atheist.
No, not necessarily. If you went to a Christian town and you were like, hey, I'm starting a soup kitchen by atheists versus, hey, I'm starting a soup kitchen, one of them's going to get a lot of attention negatively and the other one's probably going to get you some money, right? So like, it does matter what you call it. And if we want to be super pragmatic, just start a soup kitchen. It doesn't need to have a religious affiliation or an explicitly non-religious affiliation. It just needs to give soup to people.
Look at Doctors Without Borders.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So
you're saying change the name because people will perceive it differently.
Well, I'm saying if you want to get that pragmatic into, hey, just do whatever makes the most sense in your area and we'll do it for the path of least resistance.
Then marketing.
Sure, marketing-wise, do that. If your goal is to make a political statement, then definitely tack atheist onto it. But then be honest about the fact that it's a political statement and you're not actually trying to feed people soup.
No political statements.
Cool. All right. So, Kay, I think we mostly agree on this.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
just for the record, does everything that I call about have to be something that you're opposed to, or?
It makes for better radio, and the format of this show is one of conversation and one where ideas are challenged, so that maybe people who are watching or listening can engage on both sides with those ideas and grow from it. That's really what we want to see the most of. And it doesn't necessarily need to be religion, but if it can be challenging ideas so that people can learn and grow from those conversations, that's really where we want to find that sweet spot.
I suppose the reason why I decided to go with his topic was because during one of your calls, you said a long time ago that you don't do the calls with theists for you do it for the people listening.
Yeah.
So I was mostly aiming for those people, the ones that don't agree with me, and that you agree.
Okay, if that's the case, lead with that. We may have had a different conversation.
I didn't know that. Sure.
Yeah, you're good.
No worries. Yeah. Anyway, Kay, thank you for calling in, and we'll talk to you.
Wait. Before I go, don't hang up on me yet. Okay.
Oh God.
I just wanted to say thank you because I think 2 weeks ago I called and nobody answered, but one of the people in the call screen told me that you guys actually pay for me to be on the line.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
so
we do.
Thank you for that. I didn't know that, so I'm grateful. Thank you.
Oh,
Absolutely.
And Destiny heard your one of your calls and he's willing to speak to you. And I have to say, I'm not his fan. I question some of the things that he says, but I still appreciate what he does. So you guys have a chance to speak to him. Maybe you can convince him of certain things.
well, yeah. Hey, I saw the retweet. We got most of our views for that clip from that retweet. So, thanks, I guess. But
call the show.
yeah, I invited him personally to call the show. So if he decides to, then cool, we will have that conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Have a good one.
You
Bye.
too. Okay. So I picked the last one. You get to pick between the next two. Who's next? We've got two callers left.
Yes.
One of them wants to talk about the ontological argument for the evidence of God.
Well, let's just be straight up. It's Zeno calling back after last week.
And the other is going by a pseudonym and wants to talk about theists shoving their religion at atheists during times of stress and grief. And this is what we're looking at on our end.
Right. So Zeno, I appreciate you calling back. I'm going to be on next week solo, and I think that would be a great time to continue our conversation that we started last week. We only have about 15 minutes left. Less if we want to rate super chats and everything.
Fair enough.
Don't think we're going to get to everything in 10 minutes. So
Call early, Zeno.
call next week. Call as soon as you can. If you're in church before or whatever, that's totally fine. But yeah, we'll talk next week.
Yeah, if you notice, the first caller, the person who's in at the beginning, usually gets up to 30 minutes sometimes. The callers afterwards get progressively less time.
Yep.
So, yeah. And then in the meantime, then, our last call today will be AR from Parts
just
Unknown.
R.
Oh, sorry. R. You're right. A is for atheist, right? R from Parts Unknown.
A is for atheist.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes, I am, and I'm going by my first initial and not saying where I am, so I don't have any negative repercussions
Of course.
for
That's
being an atheist.
Understood.
No worries.
And I'm so glad that my call wasn't bumped in favor of Zeno's.
Well,
I'm calling to piggyback off another caller a couple of weeks ago, Keith in New Jersey, who had a cat who was dying with kidney failure. I not only love cats and animals in general, I am a cat rescuer. And I've been doing this for a lot of years. I've literally helped save the lives of thousands of cats. And I was pleased when I saw that you adopted a rescued cat.
Oh, of course.
oh, yeah. I
And
mean,
I can give you advice about how to prevent her from keeping you awake at night, because I think you said that once.
Well, we are going to have an after show, so if you want to pop over there
Sure.
and give us a couple of hints, we would not be mad.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you've seen pictures of our pirate kitty, it's hard not to just, yeah.
Do whatever she wants all
Yeah,
the time.
If people want to see our cat, she has her own Twitter. Her name is Moco.
And it's at Spanish Booger.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, so I have been in Keith's situations, among others, having lost 3 cats in the past 3 years, 2 of them to kidney failure and 1 to cancer. And when I've had this, like Keith, I've had people say, "Oh, I'll pray for you." And you know what? They are not doing it to be nice or compassionate. I know I'll get even atheists disagreeing with me on that, but I'm going to plant my flag on this hill. Okay? They are not saying it for me or anyone else except for themselves, because they are choosing a time of bereavement to shove religion at someone else, regardless of whether that person will find it welcome, as if it's some kind of default position. We have religion shoved at us all the time by politicians, in popular culture. We can't even spend money that doesn't say "In God We Trust," as if anyone who doesn't trust in God isn't, quote, one of us. I've been an educator for more than 20 years. I once was required to post an "In God We Trust" sign in a classroom, as everyone in that school district was.
Yeah.
I personally got around it by posting it with its blank side facing outward. They didn't say what side it had to be facing outward.
Nice.
We're also threatened with eternal torture for not abdicating reason in favor of superstition. We shouldn't have to deal with this when we're facing the loss of a loved one. And I hope any theists listening to this will just back off, or at the very least, find out if the recipient of "I'll pray for you" is going to be receptive of it, if they find it welcome.
I think the last point you made is the most poignant to me, because we're not going to push back. The only thing that I would say is there are a number of asterisks there that I think help me be a better person and help me be a more empathetic and understanding person. But those things that I want to add do not invalidate what you just said. The fact is that the person who said that to you, you know them better than we do. We are absolute strangers. We never met them. And there are some really fucking awful Christians who do say, "Oh, I'll pray for you," as a way of sticking it to you, or, you know, or who will find ways to bring their religion up to make you uncomfortable. And if that's the case, then that's the case. We don't know them. We're not going to freaking defend them. That said, it does help me when I'm grieving. It does help me when I am upset to know that if somebody tells me that they're praying for me, more likely than not, what they're saying is, I feel like I don't have any control, and this is a way that makes me feel like I have some kind of control, and I'm rooting for you. And when I put it in that context, it makes me less angry. There are people who don't deserve that charity. And I think that no one is, you know, entitled to that charity. And being upset, you know, where you're at is entirely understandable. It just helps me, you know?
It doesn't help me an iota, quite frankly.
Then that's
they should
okay.
At the very least, find out if I'm going to find it welcome, as if their superstition is some kind of a default, when it's not.
Sure. And you know what? That is entirely fair. The fact that somebody is going to engage with you and not know anything about you, it doesn't make any sense. And if somebody does know that is not welcome and they do it anyway, then they're being an asshole. Yeah, no, it's agreed.
Well, it's at the very least, you should find out if it's welcome.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There is a lack of consent culture in Christianity in America across the board, and saying,
I hadn't noticed.
Right? Like, shocker. Saying "I will pray for you," assuming that the other person is either assuming the other person is going to agree with that and not find that triggering and hurtful, or knowing that they will find it triggering and hurtful and saying it anyway, are both examples of crossing a boundary that you should not cross. It's the same with, tell a Christian parent that a child has the right to say, "I don't want a hug from my uncle," and they will go nuts. Tell a Christian that, you know, I'm not a hugger. Do not hug me. Like, I ask before you touch me. What? I'm just being nice. I just love you. Give me a hug right now. Like,
yeah.
It's aggressive, and it's not consent based, and it's just the way that culture is, and it's bad. It's not helpful. And in situations where the other person is dealing with grief or stress or hurt, and they have to then also deal with having that boundary violated, that just makes things worse for everybody involved. So yeah, if you are listening and you don't understand why this might be hurtful to somebody like R, that is a really good indication that maybe you should look at where you have boundaries in your own life and what you think about other people's boundaries. You don't have to agree with them for them to be real, right? If your boundary is do not ever say this to me ever, it doesn't matter if the other person thinks that's a reasonable boundary or not. That is a boundary. And they can talk to you about it if you want to, if you consent to that conversation. But otherwise, that's what you have to respect. You have to respect that.
Well,
and that's just...
You know what?
That was a fucking
sorry, I didn't mean
fire
to cut you off,
statement.
but I'm a big boy. I can take it when people say, I'll pray for you in other circumstances, and I'll just come back with something snarky. But here, they're shoving it in my face during a time of grief.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's a line that I won't let people cross.
Good. Don't let people cross that line. And get mad if they do. The only thing we would ask then is be honest about that line. And if they cross it anyway, then you know that person's not worth being around anymore.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
thank
Art.
you.
And thank you for what you do. You know, rescuing cats is actually kind of really badass and awesome.
It is. And it's...
tell me about it. This weekend, I've passed the 200 mark for the year.
Wow.
Holy moly.
Yeah, I know. So we're talking about roughly an average of a cat per day.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's exhausting. It's the amount of time I put into it is what if I had like a full-time job plus overtime, and I do have a job.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, and I lose thousands of dollars per year doing this because I have to pay for the vet bills out of my own pocket.
Wow.
That is intense, and we're really happy people like you are out there.
We are, and I'm glad that you're setting boundaries that you feel are comfortable and sticking to them. That's important, and it is valid.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you so much.
And where do I find you after the show to give you cat advice?
If you go to tiny.cc/SC
SC Discord, it's actually the link.
Is it posted on the YouTube? Because I haven't been there before.
Yeah,
it is.
It'll be in the description as a link.
Yep.
Sounds good. All right.
Cool.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yep.
So before we move on to Super Chats, though, hey, everybody. Are you sick of the ads? Do you want to get your podcast without all of the interruptions? I actually saw in the live chat that somebody got an ad for Christian dating before the show.
Oh, no, an eHarmony ad?
Well, I mean, what kills me is, like, I understand the whole, we want to teach you. We want to have this conversation. And, maybe we're going to browbeat you or shame you. But Christian dating feels like a swing and a miss. Like, I don't feel like you're hitting any of your target audience on that one.
I mean, yeah.
If anything, maybe.
Here's the thing, though. We have so many tags that's like God's existence and Christian conversations. So I bet you they just like searched for tags and was like, this looks like a thing we should.
Well, maybe we can incentivize it. If you're an atheist and you want to set up a Christian dating profile and have fun in there, obviously they're asking for you to join. That could be fun. That said, though, this is all getting to the fact that you can get an ad-free version of the show by going to patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration. The show entirely runs on your support, and we sincerely appreciate it.
We really should not have made the show so difficult to say quickly.
Yeah.
We both just fumbled it in the last 2 minutes.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're not part of a larger group. We're not part of a larger atheist nonprofit. It's just V and I and our incredible volunteers.
And Moko.
And Moko, the crew cat, our crew cat.
She's not much of a crew cat. She's more like I'm going to wait till you're done and then demand attention cat.
Yeah. And she's a Sokka goblin, but we'll get to that at some other point.
All right.
In the meantime, let's read some super chats. Viper Zhang sent $5 and says, I just like how the term straight is appropriated from gay culture.
Oh, interesting. I don't know if I know this etymological history.
Mm-hmm.
RG sent $1.99 and a banana per the usual. Thank you for your banana, RG. It's always appreciated.
Yeah, Viper saying sent another $2 and said, I don't get ads. I have premium. Thank you again. And super chats get read at the end of every episode. 100% of the super chats goes towards producing the show, the equipment, keeping everything going. Like one of our last callers had mentioned, we pay for the people waiting on the line. We pay for the minutes. We got the plan. All of that.
We got the
takes,
plan.
we've yes.
I'm sorry, I'm having too much fun.
That's okay. I'm already wearing my Hawaiian shirt. I'm off for the week. I'm not going to be here next weekend. You're going to be flying solo. I'm going to be out paddleboarding.
Yeah.
I love you, and it was really fun doing an episode with you.
Yeah. It's almost like we don't do this all the time anymore.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get back to it.
We will. But until next time, we're glad we had this talk.